So who would have guessed that the studio behind the Destiny games, as well as the Halo games, would be under fire for their latest project called Marathon? If you haven't heard about the situation surrounding Marathon, I'm going to be diving deep into what the biggest problems with the game are and what my solutions are for Bungie. Just to be a little empathetic towards Bungie, I love Destiny, okay? When I was growing up, I was a huge fan of Star Wars and sci-fi and all those types of universes. They were very immersive and still are in many ways. The thing that reeled me into Destiny in the first place was its world, okay? I was able to envision myself, instead of sitting at school all day, instead of, doing boring homework, there was that free time where you got to sit down and ride on sparrows, right? Do the speeder bike chases, just like in Star Wars. Or you could go raid with your friends. You would be able to voice chat, solve puzzles on the fly, figure out, problems and strategies, and then you'd ultimately get rewarded for that experience. And that is always what I think about when I think of Destiny. Now, the developers at Bungie are trying to replicate this experience in a couple different ways. Marathon is their next attempt at this, and it is categorized currently as an extraction shooter, meaning you as the player spawn into a world, you're still with your friends, there might be some light puzzle solving here and there, but you're mostly there to attack enemies, whether they are AI or computer-based or real-time players that are playing the game as well. You'll eventually loot, gather some new cool weapons or armor, and then you extract out of the world. And you keep doing that loop so that you feel a sense of satisfaction when you get items or find things. And that's the central idea. Now, despite all these structural, strategic decisions around Marathon, it still has two things going for it. Number one is the visual identity of Marathon, and number two is the fact that Bungie is making it. Now, if you haven't been caught up with the news, I'm here to share that the first bullet point that I just brought up, the visual aesthetic of the game, turns out that has been completely ripped and stolen from somebody online. Okay, somebody came out on X posting their thoughts about, looks like my personal assets that I've created as a graphic designer have been copied and ripped and put right into the core identity of what Marathon is. And if you do any type of surface level digging into this topic, it has been completely blown up into a massive problem. The art directors went live on Twitch yesterday to explain the situation, and they had to cover up a lot of things, saying that, employees of Bungie were the ones who initially used these assets to get an idea of the identity of what Marathon is going to be. But it turns out every member of the art team at Bungie right now has been following the person that created all that art years ago. So that's the biggest problem right now. The coolest thing that Marathon had going for it was its visual style, and that is stolen. And then point number two, because it is made by Bungie, you would expect it to feel good as a game, right? They made Halo. They know that crunchy first-person combat. They know how to make weapon animations look smooth, but also powerful. And that's really a massive appeal for what Destiny really is about. There's all these types of weapons you can use. There's different armor sets to customize your character. And overall, you become engaged in what your character looks like. And I feel like Bungie this time around, since it still is a side project, is only borrowing some of the best ideas that Destiny has, but not creating a new aesthetic or a new feel for what Marathon could be. Overall, this puts Marathon in a pretty iffy spot. The game is set to release in about 4 months from now, and with the big problems that I just mentioned popping up, I don't see this game releasing for at least another 10 months to a year out. I think if they were going to release this year, a lot more things would have had to work in its favor for the community to accept it as a game, honestly. So now that you have the context of what Marathon is and what Bungie as a studio is trying to do with both of these franchises moving forward, I want to give you my thoughts. This all ties back to what I was talking about at the beginning of the video, where I said Destiny was a world that I could see myself playing in for days, weeks, months, years at a time. And it was. I really was hooked on what Destiny was, regardless of the problems. That foundational core identity of Destiny sets it apart from lots of games. That's why the game is still very popular. That's why the franchise has lasted a decade. And I think that the ways that Marathon has been founded as a new IP is wrong. I am not in the boat that Marathon should be canceled and canned and nobody cares and you should only focus on Destiny going forward, because that approach didn't work when it came to Destiny, okay? They had made the Halo games and wanted to move on to their next big thing. That became Destiny. No matter how rough those initial stages of it were, I love what we got out of Destiny. I think if Destiny 3 is their next safe bet, they should still be very creative with how that turns out and take a new spin on that. Keep it as Destiny. Don't mess around with it too much. But if they also want Marathon to thrive, they have to treat it the same way that they do with Destiny. They have to nail these two things, and that's it. They have to make the world fun to be in, and they need the loop of the gameplay to be fun. If I were to change one big aspect of the gameplay to actually intrigue players who don't want an extraction shooter, it would be to make a battle royale. This is a controversial take, but it opens up the doors for new players to join the world of Marathon. Most people like the aesthetic of the world, but guess what? They don't like that loop. They don't like the gameplay of it. So if you were to make and take all of the elements that Marathon already has, looting, fighting enemies, fighting real players, leaving certain areas, exploring parts of the world, you have all of the elements for a great battle royale game. And I see Marathon as being a redefined version of the battle royale genre. Something has to take over Apex because Apex is going downhill. All these other extraction shooters are mostly oriented towards the PC market, and that can still be pretty niche at times. I think there's an opportunity here for, in 1 year's time, release an amazing battle royale version of Marathon. I would play that. I would absolutely play that. My buddies would try that instantaneously because it would take over the best aspects of what it currently is and put it into something new. So that's my 2 cents on the situation. I really want Bungie to step back and figure this situation out. I think that Marathon has some cool ideas, but it needs to cook in the oven for another year with some big reinventions of what this game is going to be. I put my opinions in there. I gave you some context to the story. I want to hear your opinions on what you think about Marathon, what you think about Bungie as a studio, and just give me your thoughts on what you want to see when it comes to Marathon or Destiny. Critical Fish. See you later.